There are 4 major pillars of the man of flesh. 1, the thought. You cannot carry mastery when your thoughts are warped. You need a conditioned mind, not just a mind with knowledge. The end of all knowledge is to condition you, set. They are held in perfect peace, whose mind is set. Set your mind on things above. God speaks of a particular setting when we're talking about thoughts. It's not just to have the right mind of things, but to have the right setting in the mind of things. The right attitude in the mind of things. And that thought life is supposed to be a constant. You can never master anything without the right attitude of thought. Without the right mental attitude. I can do it. It has to be in you. You know, you have people who they think right. They think right when everything is going on right. When pressure hits them, oh my God, they fall back. I can't do this. I'm not able to do this. I don't think and then they start to think some of the ugliest things they could ever think of self, because they do not know how to hold their mind when they're under pressure. When they're under pressure. Okay? If you're a pastor tomorrow and an attack hit your ministry and half your church left, what's the attitude of mind you keep? Because the biggest percentage of shepherds will go through this at one time, where a certain percentage of people will leave because you're attacked or something like that. Happens. Has happened to me before. It has happened to many ministers that are listening to me right now. But what attitude, what mindset do you keep? Because if you don't know how, you will bleed before the people that didn't cut you. And then you walk out of divine instruction and start to preach and minister to people, feeding them with your own convictions and not the ministry of the Spirit of that hour, because you're a bleeding man. I wish I had time to talk about shepherds bleeding, because that's also another sermon. Our altars are not supposed to be altars of sacrifice. The ultimate sacrifice was done in Christ. It doesn't mean that we don't bleed, but we learn not to bleed on the altar, because this altar is victory. This altar is triumph. But the tenacity and grace to sustain yourself when stuff is working against you takes a great exercising of the self. Self-mastery is that number 1. You cannot master anything in the world until you learn to first master yourself. And I'm showing you how. You begin with your thoughts. 2, your cravings and appetite. You cannot master self without mastering your cravings and appetite. What do I mean by mastering them? Not everything you crave for you should eat or take or indulge. Not everything you feel the appetite for you have to respond to. Carnal, sensual, you don't need to. And one of the most defining element of appetite is food. If you cannot limit the food you eat, you can never master yourself. Food. Some people eat anyhow. They eat anything. They eat anytime. And sit down a person who is a big eater, and you will see that they don't eat much because they love food. They eat much because food became their comfort. Something in them is cut and it is wounded. And until you heal that wound, so they stop to look at chocolate or cake or meat or something for their comfort, they can never stop. People with high appetites are bleeding people. They're bleeding people. the bleeding people. Some as well, the other cluster that I've seen that pushes people into that is parents. Some parents have raised their children to think that you can express love by feeding your child abnormally. And some parents don't even know that their children eat abnormally. And so by the time the child realizes that, some of them, when they grow, they even turn against their parents because they're saying, this is the reason why I'm not married. You fed me like you were feeding anything. But if a man can't tame food, you can't tame anything. That is why fasting is part of the breaking of the body to subjection to the spirit man. That's why you are most tempted when you're fasting, in the first stage of your fast. Because every carnal, sensual desire in you, all manner of concupisciousness is stirred. And it takes great grace to overrun that and then find your stability in the spirit. If you don't rule your food, you can never manage yourself. I tell people, never eat all you want all the time you want. To see something and refuse, desist to eat it. And if you grow in the things of the spirit, you will understand that there's a certain space as a man continues to eat, it starts to frustrate the space that hears God. Those who hear God can understand it. 3, your emotions. Self-mastery is to learn to rule your emotions. How do you react when you're offended? How do you react, when somebody annoys you? Oh, what if they've not acted the right way? Oh, they've gone out of their own character. Does that mean that you're consumed by their evil? All right. The other 4th is your work life. Man was called to a world of labor, some sort of labor, the right form of labor, the blessed kind of labor. Okay. And all of us have a work ethic, because your work ethic defines your heart of service, regardless of whether you're rewarded for that work or you're doing it voluntarily. You must be a hard worker. Your working life must be up there. I mean, you cannot be lazy. Laziness is a spirit. And I have a sermon on that soon I'll teach. I wrote it a couple of months ago. Okay, he gives examples of the ant and what, but what really is trying to say that there are people who are lazy. A little sleep and a little slumber, poverty pounces on you. But when you read the context, he's really talking about the lazy fellow. Some people don't know how to do good for themselves. They don't know how to be independent. Okay, we have many young people who don't work. They don't like working. They don't like putting themselves to the service of anything. And those Paul calls busybodies. All right? That means you're busy in your body, but you're idle in your spirit. If you're not a hard worker, okay, you must have the right attitude towards work. Okay? If I'm a preacher, what does it take to prepare someone? What does it take, to serve men? What does it take? Sometimes there are going to be countless hours. There are going to be tears, sweat, and blood. They will come through. But the point is, my attitude must be right concerning work. Because watch a man whose work life or attitude toward life or toward work is warped, and you will see a man who is poor, dependent, and confused.